and listening to Breakfast with Paul and Anne. We're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio, so don't forget, if you're watching us anywhere in the world on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Then you can do the app, and then you can do DAB+, which I still haven't got fixed in my car yet. So I take the app with me and just play it.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, you connect it to the car radio. Yeah, you can do that as well. Basically, we're everywhere. We're on everything and everywhere.
Exactly. Let us know where you're watching and your favourite ABBA song, because that's really important today.
Yeah, GBViews at gbnews.uk. It's 6:39. Let's go through the front pages this morning, which, no surprise, they've all got this man on it, Rishi Sunak. The Mirror starting with "About time, Rishi." The Mirror says the Chancellor is finally helping struggling families 5 months after the paper and Labour demanded it.
Yeah, they're claiming that as a victory. The Daily Express has the headline, "Rishi's £1,200 boost for 8 million people," calling the Chancellor's energy bill a lifeline.
Yeah, the Times says the Tories are split on the tax and spending bonanza. A number of ministers believed to be reticent over the impact of the windfall tax on investment plans in the North Sea.
The Daily Mail has been cautious on the Chancellor's plan, asking when will Tories get back to just cutting taxes.
Yeah. Let's go through the papers now. Joining us this morning, it is Ella Whelan and Benedict Spence.
Good morning.
Morning to you, Benedict. Morning. First of all, what do you make of Rishi Sunak's spending splurge yesterday, Benedict?
Well, something needed to be done to alleviate the suffering of the millions of the poorest people in this country who will be very badly hit by things like energy price rises, food price rises and all that. So something did need to be done. However, certainly the days of the Tory party being the sort of the neoliberal Thatcherites of the world, I think you could say are well and truly dead and buried if the pandemic hadn't already done that. The Tories are now addicted to spending money that they don't currently have in the bank. And, I think it's very telling that, we're talking about a £5 billion windfall tax, but the total cost of all of this, according to every newspaper, according to the Chancellor, is 21 billion. So, you're kind of sat there going, that doesn't sound entirely promising, given that it's not just a cost of living crisis. We are sort of plunging forward into a global recession. And not just on the front page of the Telegraph, actually. Fraser Nelson, the editor of The Spectator, has a column inside the paper saying as much, that actually, whilst this will stave off a lot of suffering for a lot of people in the short term, long term, this is going to harm the British economy going forward. When a recovery does come, it's going to sort of taper it off a little bit.
Rishi Sunak says he can handle that.
Well, that's good to know from Rishi Sunak. It doesn't actually go into any great details as to how we're going to do that.
He is extraordinary. I mean, for a Conservative Chancellor, he's given away more money than you can remember.
It's hard to understand what Rishi Sunak's politics really is, because throughout the pandemic, for obvious reasons, he took some extraordinary measures. But there has always been this tension between Sunak and the rest of Cabinet, and particularly Johnson, in terms of what kind of Conservative Party he wants to portray, and there's a reason. I think he quite enjoys the idea that he is the nice Chancellor and the one who gets all the kudos for doing the good thing by giving out more money, and that has been a source of kind of conflict particularly between him and Johnson in the past. But if you just get into the spread in the Mail here, goes into the detail of what this will actually mean for each section of society and different people. And you have, for example, energy bill discounts of £400, and that's for everyone across the board. You then have £650 for a one-off payment, and these are all grants, not payments that will have to be repaid, which was previously suggested, that 200 quid that you would have to pay back in instalments. 650 for people on universal credit and things like that. Pensioners with £300, and people on disability benefits 150. Which, yes, it is generous. There's no one questioning that. But in the context of, in the last sort of month, we've seen prices jump. First of all, it was sort of, there's going to be an extra few hundred on your energy bill. And then next thing, in a few weeks, we hear, well, actually, it might be £2,600. And in that context, £400 is nothing, really. And the bigger question is, with the Benedict's, qualms about spending on board, the problem is if you have, this kind of stay of execution, which essentially this is by means of a handout, is very welcome and it's necessary, and he couldn't have done anything else. And I don't often defend the Labour Party, but I think it is pretty ridiculous that they have basically the Conservative Party's played a political game. Everyone knew they were going to go for the windfall tax. They just didn't want to do it quick enough.
Don't mention the T word. It's not a tax. Energy profits levy.
Yeah, it's a bit like what kind of spin of words. But the bigger question is, all of this would be able to be absorbed and would be sort of less paltry and less frightening at the same time if there was a long-term plan for economic growth, if there was a long-term plan for policy on energy in terms of whether it's nuclear power, fracking, whatever it is. But there's none of that. And so then this really is just a state of execution. I can imagine we'll be in the same place next year.
That's so interesting. I was talking to someone in Uxbridge High Street yesterday. I was out getting the public's reaction, and one man said to me, he said, you can't just keep coming back to the Commons and giving out money. What's the long-term plan?
I think Ella touches upon something that's very important, which is it's very important for Mr Sunak to be liked, and we all know it's also very important for Mr Johnson to be liked. There's been a hollowing out of the ideological core of the Conservative Party. I don't really care which side it is, whether you're sort of an old-school Conservative or a free market sort of Conservative. Realistically, you need a long-term strategy, and I think, again, touching on a lack of energy policy, which is what we're really talking about here, there isn't really one beyond sort of these mealy-mouthed talking about net zero, which when you really get into it is not actually a particularly cost-effective or wonderful strategy when you consider the knock-on effects it has to things like fertilizer production, to things like construction, all of these.
We are investing more in nuclear energy, aren't we?
Well, we are, but we should have been doing this, and people have been saying this for days. And this is the thing that really kind of very much irritates me, is when we're talking about this now, and lots of people are going, oh, well, Russia was unforeseen. No, lots of people have been talking about this for a very long time, but successive governments, because let's be honest, Boris Johnson hasn't been Prime Minister for this whole time. We had Theresa May, we had David Cameron before. Actually, they've talked about these sort of things. They've paid lip service to it. What has actually happened? Very little. And now we find ourselves in this position where people are saying, finally, right, we'll start investing in energy, we'll start investing in this, that, and the other. But the point is the horse has already bolted, and we are going to be lumped with an absolute, a huge amount of debt. As much as it says that these are grants that don't need to be paid back, yes, they absolutely
do. You think, the Tory critics of Rishi Sunak's statement yesterday are saying that the trouble is if you remove the incentive for some of the oil companies, for instance, to invest in more in North Sea exploration and things like that, if you remove their incentive, then they will go away, and BP has already said they might.
Well, this is the thing, and as I say, though, it's...
But if you're poor, you can't afford to take a long term.
Of course, that is the issue. It's an incredibly frustrating thing, because right now, actually, what else can Rishi Sunak do, especially with the Labour Party sort of banging on saying X, Y, Z has to be done, and you're sort of looking around going, well, beyond cutting taxes, which would probably be a very good idea, but we can't because we've already jacked them all up because we spent a lot of money on the pandemic. What else is there to do? As I say, they've painted themselves into a corner. It's far more important for these two men, Johnson and Sunak, to be popular rather than sort of be ideologically driven or to be consistent. And that is the state of the government that we currently have, which is why ultimately, I think personally, we find ourselves in the mess that we are. A lack of coherence when it comes to strategy in favour of PR, effectively.
GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to feed back to us on that one this morning. Ella, what else has caught your eye in the
Well, we're running out of time, I think. We've only got time for one more, so let's go for something nice and juicy. What about, it's either fish and chips or ABBA. What do you fancy? Or both together.
ABBA?
Let's do ABBA, because the interesting thing, everyone's sort of celebrating the return or the holographic return of the band, and this piece in the Times talks about the fact that while everyone will be, I think, initially excited by the idea, the band does have to recuperate £140 million in costs, because it's in terms of they had the special effects from the studio behind Star Wars, the kind of motion capture suits that they wore, all the incredible amount of stuff that went into producing this costs eye-watering amounts. The band has a particular kind of stance when it comes to advertising. They won't take any big sponsors, they won't take any commercial advertising. They are only going with one, Oceanbird, which is a kind of environmentally conscious organisation that they work with. So their whole aspiration is to get back the money through tickets. And they've sold 380,000. That's a huge amount. It's very successful. But the Times is talking about there being some nerves as to whether or not this will continue into the long run, because next to this piece about the £140 million cost is a review that says holograms are fine, but the real thing is still best, which I think a lot of people might feel.
But you can't see them. You can't see the real thing now because they're older.
Of course.
And if you want to see them as they were in their
Is that a
heyday.
bit ageist?
No, that's why they say they've done it.
Oh, well,
Because
true.
they
Yeah,
just
fair
don't look
enough.
the same anymore, and of course not. I mean, it's 40 years later.
Well, I mean, I think die-hard fans wouldn't care what they look like or what they sound like. They are still quite clearly, if they were able to produce this thing, they are still good performers. Fair enough if they want to. Interviews have said that some of them are saying, "I'm looking forward to being able to be gardening, knowing that I'm playing in London or Belgium or wherever else." But there is that. It's an interesting thing, which is that I'm going to read the reviews of it across the papers today because I can't help but thinking, and I love ABBA, and "Take a Chance on Me" is my favourite song. But if this doesn't just feel like watching a film or something like that, and I think that might reflect people's desire to, in the long run, go and see it.
Yeah. Is it a world tour?
They have aspirations
Okay.
for it, so it's going to initially be in the UK, and they say that there's a particular love they have for Brits and that we have for them. There's a kind of relationship
Sure.
there with ABBA. But that, it sort of sounds like in the Times that they're saying if that doesn't go as successfully as we think it's going to, we're going to take it across the world. Or you could read it in that if it goes incredibly successfully, they could be playing all over the place. And also the thing is that they can play simultaneously. So this is the exciting thing about
They
a
could be
hologram. You could be in all places at once.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the Midas touch, though, don't they? ABBA. Everything they do seems to be high quality and awfully well done and terribly, terribly popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're seasoned performers, so it'll be interesting to see how many people buy those tickets. Thanks, guys. Ella, Benedict, thank you. More from them to come throughout the morning.
Yeah, and it's exactly 10 to 7, actually. It's 9 minutes to 7. No, it's 10 to 7. Is it? What is it?
It's 10 to 7.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.